Okay, hold on, guys, because we've got to revisit these text messages. And here's why. We were told in closing arguments yesterday by the prosecution that the defense is using DARVO tactics against Grace Jabbari. If you're not familiar with what DARVO is, it's an acronym that stands for Deny, Attack, Reverse, Victim, and Offender. So basically, the strategy is if there's a victim of abuse, the abuser will deny it, attack the victim to discredit them, and then reverse the roles by saying that, oh no, they did that to me. That's what DARVO, in a very short summary, means. And in the Jonathan Majors case, we have the prosecution saying that the defense is doing that to Grace Jabbari, probably because even though they want to, they probably can't come right out and say that that's what Jonathan Majors is doing to Grace Jabbari. But let's take a step back. We know that Jonathan Majors went to file a domestic incident report against Grace Jabbari back in June. We know that the Detective Mejia, found probable cause to arrest her for misdemeanor assault and criminal mischief. Which, by the way, if someone is engaging in criminal mischief, you have the right to, fight and defend yourself against that without it being assault or harassment, which are the charges that Jonathan Majors is facing. And then third, we know that those text messages, even though the jury does not know this, as far as I'm aware of, we know that those text messages are from that September 2022 multi-day fight. It spanned 2 to 3 days. It started when Grace Jabbari came home drunk from a pub with a friend to the shared house that they lived in London at the time. That Jonathan Majors at some point, according to her testimony, kicked them both out. That they met up again the next day, so on day 2, to talk it out, resolve this fight. It didn't go so well. Something happened. She said that he pulled the headphones out, said, "You're not listening to me," stomped on the headphones, and started throwing objects, including her clothes, down the stairs, while also putting bags of her clothes together, as if to say, "Get out." Now, at some point, we also have the Coretta Scott King recording during this argument and those series of text messages, but we don't know for a fact when exactly those things came into play. However, we know in the text messages, he's expressing a lot of self-hate and threats of unaliving himself. She's talking about, "I'll just tell them I hit my head," and mentioned something about a broken necklace that he seems to think that she broke. And she also testified that during that fight that he was breaking things that she had given to him as sentimental gifts. Then in the Coretta Scott King recording, we have a bit where he says, "Last night, 2 nights ago," he corrects himself and says, "2 nights ago, you did not do that." So it's possible that the Coretta Scott King recording is happening on day 3 and is referring to 2 nights ago when she came home with the pub friend and they got into this fight. But again, we still don't know where to place those text messages, but they were very full of self-hate, self-talk, negative self-talk. And then that Coretta Scott King recording is very building up language. "I'm a great man." So those are the things that we know from the context. And we need to revisit something about September 2022 as it relates to this domestic incident report that Jonathan Majors filed and Detective Mejia agreed was enough for probable cause to issue an appearance ticket for Grace Jabbari's arrest. Now, where this is coming from is today, shout out to Black Ninja de Canoa. I think I'm saying it right. Maybe it's Kenoa, but trying. And before I show exactly what they pointed out, that is a huge detail. This is why it's great that we're all coming together and looking for information and talking, because the details can get lost in the sauce. So please don't ever be discouraged from looking for answers, looking for information, and maybe pointing out that things aren't always the way they seem on the surface at first. Because Black Ninja de Canoa is bringing us back to a detail that was out in the air that Laura Italiano from Business Insider talked about back in June that is really, really a significant detail. I've had my nose buried in this case and totally over my head. So shout out to them for bringing this puzzle piece into the picture. And so here's where it came from. So we're in a conversation with Emily, Danny, everyone's talking about, how this harassment charge that's involving the part where Grace Jabbari is trying to get out of the car, Jonathan Majors trying to get her in the car. Is that harassment? Does that qualify as harassment? And as soon as Danny reiterates that both she and the driver said he was literally trying to keep her at bay, keep her in the car, Black Ninja de Kanoha comes along and says, why doesn't anyone talk about Jonathan Majors having already said that she has attacked him before? And does it count as her friend testifying that she says she is very confrontational with Jonathan, referring to Holly Blakey? Now he pulls this screenshot where, if you want the short here and you want to get moving on, it says, in his domestic incident report, Majors alleges that Jabbari had attacked him on prior occasions, though none were reported, including a verbal dispute in London that became physical, as his report to police describes it. Now, there's two reasons this is big. It's he, as an alleged victim, is reporting on prior assaults, and it's being noted he didn't report it before. But now in the courtroom, we're seeing all this talk about how victims, meaning people like Grace Jabbari, don't come forward and report, even if there are multiple instances or patterns of abuse. So we have Jonathan Majors alleging past physical abuse, including this specific September 2022 London incident. And we're watching the prosecution accuse Jonathan Majors' team, their whole defense team, as using DARVO, deny, attack, and then reverse victim and offender roles. But then I read this, and we're seeing exactly what the prosecution is describing as a victim. Someone that deals with a pattern of something, someone that tries to report with evidence, and the offender is somehow protected anyway while they deny and reverse the roles. Which, what did we see Grace Jabbari testify to about the September 2022 event? And even though she said that there was no physical violence from Jonathan Majors until the night of March 24th, March 25th, we did still have her testify that he was doing emotionally and psychologically controlling things during September 2022, as well as other incidents. Yet we have Jonathan Majors reporting that there was a prior verbal dispute and physical. This is starting to look like what the prosecution is calling DARVO in the other direction. And I would argue, since the police found probable cause and the prosecution was like, nope, get rid of that iCard, we're not going to look at it. Oh, and even if you do, we're promising to Ross Kramer, Grace Jabbari's attorney, that all things will be dropped immediately, so there's no concern to worry about. That to me sounds like the prosecution's complicit in DARVO. Their own words that they're using to attack the defense, it seems like something they're engaging in. And remember, there are two precincts, right? So Majors walks into the Chinatown precinct and gives police his own version of what actually happened that night. Now, this is referring to what happened in the car, alleging that a drunk and hysterical Jabbari scratched, slapped, and grabbed at his face, causing pain and bleeding, according to a domestic incident report and sworn affidavit obtained by Insider. A second NYPD precinct, the one that covers Majors' penthouse address in Manhattan's Chelsea neighborhood, is also involved in investigating the actor's counterclaims against Jabbari, which Insider wrote about last week. Both precincts found probable cause to arrest Jabbari and issued what is called an incident card or an iCard, an electronic document that directs police to take Jabbari into custody, at least for questioning, according to Majors' defense attorney Priya Chaudhry and a law enforcement source. But Manhattan prosecutors who are pursuing the case against Majors were for some reason reluctant to turn the tables on Jabbari, and at the district attorney's office urging the iCard was deactivated, the two said. Well, apparently one of them wasn't, because we had a whole battle on October 23rd, 24th, and 25th when the messenger first reported that Grace Jabbari was in fact going to have to appear for a desk appearance ticket, to which she was charged with misdemeanor assault and criminal mischief, and it was promptly dropped by the district attorney bright and early next thing, business day morning. And here's where it gets worse. So, this is the part that we read in the snapshot from Ninja. To say again, that in his DIR, Majors alleges that Jabbari had attacked him on prior occasions, though none were reported, including a verbal dispute in London that became physical. NYPD detectives also asked Majors, who has a 10-year-old daughter from a past marriage, a series of yes or no questions. In the prior history section of the DIR, police checked the yes box next to the following questions. So all of these are going to have yeses. Or checks in the yeses. Is suspect capable of killing you or your children? Yes. Is suspect violently and constantly jealous of you? Yes. And has the physical violence increased in frequency or severity over the past 6 months? Yes. And then they give context that Majors has denied causing any of the injuries he was arrested over and has insisted that he was not violent to Jabbari, who he alleges became violent while accusing him of getting text messages from another woman, something we've had confirmed by Grace Jabbari's own testimony. On the incident report, Majors said he did pull away from Jabbari as she grabbed for his face, coat, and phone. At another point, he admits that when their fight spilled out into traffic, he hoisted her back because, as Danny points out, them Cadillac Escalades are high up off the ground. He hoisted her back into their chauffeured black Cadillac Escalade. Quote, "I was worried she would be hurt by traffic, so I physically picked her up and put her in the car," the incident report reads. Majors describes his own injuries in detail. "In the morning, my face was stuck to the pillow because of the blood from the cut, from Jabbari digging her thumbnail into my face." That's specific if you ask me. That sounds like, right? I don't think probably down would have more force against the jawbone. So maybe that's why we have the projection possibly of the mush description that Jabbari testifies out of nowhere. She's never mentioned it before, but that he mushed her in the face with both hands. Maybe she went like. Majors additionally accuses Jabbari of running up his credit card without authorization, returning to London with his iPhone, a Rolex vintage watch, and other luxury items that cost $6,000 to $7,000. The actor is not due back in court, blah, 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 blah. And it's talking about his loss of work. But put all of this into the context of the way September 2022 is being framed. He's a big bad guy for the Coretta Scott King recording, which was 2 minutes long and started and stopped in the middle of the argument of the discussion. And we had him report in June before anyone else reported on this London incident. And it may have been what triggered Jabbari to try to twist and spin this event the same way she twisted "there's no note just letting you know what happened" to mean that she was moving and not that she was possibly committing to unaliving herself. But we have him reporting it. We have him reporting that he's scared that she could cause grave bodily harm to him or a loved one, that she's been violent because of jealousy before. These are things that the prosecution is saying that Jabbari was scared to come and report, but yet we see, as an outsider, the jury's not aware of this. We see Jonathan Majors tried to report these things, not just that he was assaulted that night, but that there was a pattern of physical abuse from an intimate partner who has gotten physical with him before, with this specific September 2022 incident mentioned. And now we're being told by the prosecution the defense is committing Darvo, but we see the media, the prosecution, and Grace Jabbari herself possibly denying Jabbari's own actions, attacking Jonathan Majors' character and credibility, and then reversing the role of victim and offender. I saw Black Ninja de Kanoha tweet this, post this sometime, maybe last night, whenever I saw it. And I've had some things to do, but I feel like this has been sitting on my chest and I wanted to get it out. And I wanted to see what you guys thought about it, because maybe it's just another instance where I'm reading too far into it. But I didn't know that this incident report that he filed back in June brought up specifically a prior pattern of physical abuse from Grace Jabbari against Jonathan Majors, and specifically gave London 2022, September 2022, as an example. What do you think of all of that? And again, the jury doesn't have the context that those text messages are from some point within that 2-3 day fight. And I don't think a lot of people reading the news do either, but that's why we're here. That's why I'm glad anyone that comments or is over on X sharing things, it's very significant and it's very powerful when different people, maybe one person notices one detail, someone notices another, and then they can bring it together and someone else can say, hey, well, wait, then that would mean. And honestly, that's how I'm here making these videos. So shout out to Ninja for that recall on that detail, finding that article, bringing forward that screenshot, and putting it into the open for people to see and talk about and piece together. Because I had a bunch of light bulbs go off, mostly that the prosecution specifically stated that the defense was engaging in Darvo. And I think it's very valid to say that maybe they are. That's all I've got. You guys take care until the next video, and let me know what you think.